If you remember that one, that was a good one. You're running in the woods, turn left, turn right. Oh my gosh, you're running through the woods, turn left, turn right. Oop, you hit a tree, and then you punch someone in the face, like, bam. You're supposed to do it when they're on acid. It's lots of fun. But today, I'm feeling a little weird this morning. It's 8:30 in the morning, and I've been up for 2.5 hours doing absolutely dick. And I was watching YouTube videos, or booktube videos, and my comic videos, and something just like, for those of you who know me, like, there's been comic things that have been bothering me for a very long time. And this thing that happened on the 11th just really irked me, and I just don't understand. Basically, if you don't know about it, and I wasn't even going to talk about this, but the guy who writes the G.I. Joe comic book for IDW said some fucking stupid shit about that basically boils down to, if you weren't in New York, you can't you can't remembrance or grieve or whatever for the 9/11 attacks, and that people who do are self-centered, and just, it was just such crap. And it's just like, I don't understand why this medium is like bringing out like the most horrific human beings, and it's just so, I don't know. I'm just like, really, the guy who writes G.I. fucking Joe, okay? I don't know. Anyway, so I'm just blown away. My dog's tap dancing, so. But what I really wanted to talk about was this little book, Slaughterhouse 5 by Kurt Vonnegut. I think I'm going to get that tattooed on me. Some of the things that I wanted to talk about with this book is, I read this book, I think, in high school, and I thought it was cool because it was different than most stuff I've read up till that point. And then I read it again after I got really into Vonnegut, after reading like Breakfast of Champions and Cat's Cradle and Sirens of Titan and Slapstick and stuff like that. And both times I thought the book was kind of overrated. Like, I thought it was okay, but I didn't see. I thought there was a lot of other stuff he's done that was bigger and better than Slaughterhouse 5, and I couldn't understand why this was made the big deal. And then when I started thinking about Sci-Fi September, I'm like, oh, I'm going to read this first. I haven't read it in a while, whatever. And basically what this is about is Kurt Vonnegut was in World War II in Dresden when it was firebombed. And so he wanted to really write a book about Dresden. And he had been kind of putting it off for years and years and all this other stuff. And then he finally decided he was going to do it. And so the story is about Billy Pilgrim, who was in the war as a chaplain or something like that. And his deal was that he became unstuck in time, which meant like 1 minute he'd be in the war, and then the next minute he would be at home in his 40s, and then the next minute he would be like at his wedding or something. Like it kept jumping and jumping and jumping back and forth. And one of the things was that at one point he gets abducted by a spaceship of aliens called I can't even say it now. They're from Trafalmador. Jesus, what's wrong with me? And the Tramformalinden. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I'm having a stroke right now or what, but I can't say that word. So on Tralfamador is where he's taken, and he's put in a zoo, basically. So these aliens can see what he does. And the zoo is like a swanky apartment, basically. And he's naked the whole time or whatever. But because the aliens from Tralfamador, that's what I'll say, live beyond time or outside of time, they could see the beginning, middle, and the end of existence. And death to them isn't really death, because whoever dies has always been alive in the past. So you just go back to the past times when things were good, and you're with that person again. And they know how their whole existence ends, and they do nothing to stop it, because every time it will end. So they let it end. And it's okay, because everything before that was alive. And so they'll just go back to when they were alive. So looking at time as a film strip instead of like what you're seeing in front of you right now, he talks about, like Billy Pilgrim talks about, when he dies and how it's okay, and it's not that bad because he's always going to be in the time before it and whatever. And there's something about it that when you're a teenager in your 20s and you feel like nothing can hurt you and you're invincible and you do a bunch of dumb shit like I did, you never really think about the fact that death is something you need to worry about. In my late 30s, I don't think about it like that, but reading something about that idea means a lot more to me now than it did when I was a wee lad. So that was the main thing I got from this book that just kind of like sat with me, you know. I've had kind of a lot of family members pass the last couple years, and I mean, a lot for me. I don't know, but and I haven't dealt with it at all, like at all. No tears, no anything. I just like don't think about it. And for a while I was thinking, well, maybe there's something wrong with me. Like maybe I'm a sociopath or something like that. But then I was thinking about it because, like, yesterday I did a video talking about staying with Graham Air up in Tulare. And those were good times, however awkward they were. And that's what I remember of Grandmere. And I try to think of good things about my dad, but there weren't that many. But doing this booktube channel makes me think about him a lot more, and it makes me think about the qualities of him that were good, like for the most part, because he was a writer and he read just a crap ton of science fiction and horror, and that was like what he did. And I know that I was probably influenced by him to read the books that I read, with the exception of like all the detective stuff and pulp stuff. But so I don't know. It's just it's weird. It brought up a lot of emotion for me, which I usually don't have when I'm reading, because normally I'm reading books with plots and the main focus is on the plot, not on the character coming of age or whatever. But the other thing that I wanted to talk about is that Kurt Vonnegut is someone who, it seems like lately there have been more people talking about him as an author that a lot of people like, but they don't know why, and they don't really like him, and stuff like that. And if you don't know why people like Vonnegut, this, I'm going to read a little bit, and I know that's kind of cringy for some of you, but this is why people like him. Okay, this is why he is who he is. Okay. Billy looked at the clock on the gas stove. He had an hour to kill before the saucer came. He went into the living room, swinging the bottle like a dinner bell, turned on the television. He came slightly unstuck in time, saw the late movie backwards, then forwards again. It was a movie about American bombers in the Second World War and the gallant men who flew them. Seen backwards by Billy, the story went like this. American planes full of holes and wounded men and corpses took off backwards from an airfield in England. Over France, a few German fighter planes flew at them backwards, sucked the bullets and shell fragments from some of the planes and crewmen. They did the same thing for wrecked American bombers on the ground, and those planes flew up backwards to join the formation. The formation flew backwards over a German city that was in flames. The bombers opened their bomb bay doors, exerted a miraculous magnetism which shrunk the fires, gathered them into cylindrical steel containers, and lifted the containers into the bellies of the planes. The containers were stored neatly in racks. The Germans below had miraculous devices of their own, which were long steel tubes. They used them to suck more fragments from the crewmen and planes. But there were still a few wounded Americans, though, and some of the bombers were in bad repair. Over France, though, German fighters came up again and made everything and everybody as good as new. When the bombers got back to their base, the steel cylinders were taken from the racks and shipped back to the United States of America, where factories were operating night and day, dismantling the cylinders, separating the dangerous contents into minerals. Touchingly, it was mainly women who did this work. The minerals were then shipped to specialists in remote areas It was their business to put them in the ground, to hide them cleverly so that they would never hurt anybody ever again. The American flyers turned in their uniforms and became high school kids, and Hitler turned into a baby, Billy Pilgrim supposed. That wasn't in the movie. Billy was extrapolating. Everybody turned into a baby, and all humanity, without exception, conspired biologically to produce two perfect people named Adam and Eve, he supposed. That is why he's amazing, or why he was amazing, why his work is genius. He took something silly like being unstuck in time and having to watch a war movie backwards, and as that movie went backwards, basically the war was over, everyone was better, and like the part where the scientists take apart the bombs and put the minerals that made them want to explode or whatever and buried those deep so no one would ever find them and they wouldn't hurt anybody again. That is just so freaking touching, you know? And it's just one of those many amazing things that he does or did. But anyway, so I just wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about that. So, Slaughterhouse 5, if you haven't read it, or if you haven't read it since you were in school, definitely give it another read. It's, you'll have a different view of it right now, I think. So anyway, I'll be back in a little bit, probably with something else. So I'm going to have some coffee and try to chipper up a little bit. And I will talk to you soon.